So how does fiscal policy actually work? Look at the economy depicted in the graph. It suffers from a recessionary or an unemployment gap. There are too many people in this economy looking for a job who can't find one. Expansionary fiscal policy would be designed to increase aggregate demand, bringing output closer to full employment output. You'll recall that aggregate demand equals consumption plus investment plus government spending on goods and services plus net exports. Expansionary fiscal policy involves increasing government spending on goods and services, decreasing taxes, or increasing transfer payments. First, let's look at increasing government spending. Let's assume that the government of Econoland chooses to purchase 2 jets for $300 million each, for a total of an increase in G of $600 million. The government is demanding $600 million in jets, so aggregate demand increases by $600 million. Remember that each person's expenditure becomes income to another person. Now, the workers at the jet factory have $600 million in additional income. What are they going to do with that income? Let's assume they're going to save 25% and spend 75%. You'll recall that the marginal propensity to save plus the marginal propensity to consume has to equal 1. So the marginal propensity to save in this case is 0.25. Marginal propensity to consume is 0.75. The total of those is 1. When the workers at the jet factory get an additional income of $600 million, in our case, they're going to spend $450 million. In other words, they're going to demand $450 million of additional goods and services. And you ain't seen nothing yet. Now, the people who produce the goods and services that the jet factory workers want are going to have an additional income of $450 million. They're going to spend 75% of that, or $337 million. You can see that the increase in government spending has a multiplied effect throughout the economy. If we carry this to the end, so that people are spending 75% of a minute change in income, we'll get a total of $2.4 billion. Maximum potential impact on output from the $600 million purchase of jets by the government. The multiplier effect of spending can be calculated by dividing 1 by the marginal propensity to save. In our case, the spending multiplier is 4. A $600 million purchase by the government of goods and services can lead to a maximum change in output of $2.4 billion. A $600 million purchase of goods and services by the government multiplies in the economy by a factor of 4, giving us a maximum increase in output of $2.4 billion. Now, instead of spending $600 million on jets, let's assume that the government tries to increase aggregate demand by decreasing taxes the same amount. People now have incomes of $600 million that they didn't have before, and they're going to spend 75%, or $450 million. The same multiplier effect happens where the $450 million becomes income to somebody else, who then consumes 3.37 million, and so on. So we have a maximum impact on output of 4 times 450 million, or 1.8 billion. Notice that this is smaller than the impact of the change in government spending because all of the change in government spending goes into output, increasing aggregate demand. The government demands $600 million worth of airplanes. But when household incomes rise by $600 million, they don't demand $600 million worth of goods and services. They only demand the marginal propensity to consume times their change in income, or $450 million. So the maximum impact of a tax change is smaller than the maximum impact of a government spending change. Let's consider one final scenario. Let's assume that the government wants to buy those jets for $600 million, but it wants to pay for it by increasing taxes by $600 million. What's the effect on the economy? We know that a $600 million increase in government spending can lead to a maximum increase of $2.4 billion in the greater economy, or in output. We know that by using the tax multiplier, we can get a maximum change in output from a $600 million tax change of $1.8 billion. In this case, taxes went up, so output could fall by $1.8 billion. But wait a minute. The budget was balanced, and yet there's a positive impact on aggregate demand of $600 million. How did that happen? Because government spending is stronger than taxes. A balanced budget causes output to change by the initial change in government spending. A balanced budget is when government spending is equally matched by a change in taxes. So now we have three multipliers. The government spending multiplier, or the spending multiplier, equals 1 over the marginal propensity to save. The tax multiplier, smaller than the spending multiplier, equals the marginal propensity to consume over the marginal propensity to save. Another way of calculating the tax multiplier is to take the spending multiplier and subtract 1. In our case, the spending multiplier was 4. The tax multiplier is 3, and we get it the same way whether we calculate it with marginal propensity to consume divided by marginal propensity to save, or the spending multiplier minus 1. Finally, we have the balanced budget multiplier. The balanced budget multiplier is 1 times the initial change in government spending. Now let's do some activities to practice what you've learned.